Oh, I know. I was asking you before about some of these nutritionists, clinical nutritionists, have said. Actually, there's a site that I've read on the internet by a guy named Tom Billings. It's called Beyond Veg. Do you know that site? There's a lot of, he's a vegetarian and he used to be raw, and he has tons of stuff on there about that's somewhat anti-raw.
Oh, I should look at it.
It's interesting. A lot of stories from people that used to be vegetarian, used to be raw, and have stopped. And one of the reasons he says fruitarians have stopped. They had real problems. They would be fruitarians, and then their digestion was so weak that they would go to eat nuts and seeds, for instance, afterwards, and couldn't. It was unbelievable. It'd be hard or painful or something. Do you know any? Have you heard things like that at all?
Well, I think fruitarianism. I know someone who was a fruitarian for years and his teeth fell out. Wow. I mean, so that certainly doesn't. But I'm not trying. And fruit is kind of acid, and if you're just eating like bananas and plums, maybe you don't need a lot of teeth. But I'm not taking that course. And now some things that I do hear that are anti-raw food, what I myself even said a year ago about raw foods was, it's too cold to eat raw foods in Colorado. Makes sense, I've heard that. But people eat cooked food in the summer. But the big lesson for me was that wild animals don't cook their food, even those that live in a far more northern climate. And, classical Chinese medicine says you need to cook your food. It makes it easier to digest. And I love Chinese medicine. I mean, I think acupuncture and herbs are far better than drugs and surgery. But on the other hand, the Chinese have one of the highest rates of stomach cancer on the face of the earth. So do I necessarily want to do everything the way they're doing it? Because I don't know if that's the culture that I can really epitomize as having, perfect health either. And again, look at all the medicine they need to have for all of their conditions. And Victoria Butenko told me about an acupuncturist student of hers. Actually, he's an acupuncturist, but he was a raw student of hers, that he says that the warming food really implies using warming herbs like ginger and garlic and cinnamon. And I certainly do find that in the cold months of the year, because here it is February and I'm still raw, I mean, people said, well, you'll probably give that up come winter. Put a little of those warming spices in your food, and that's one way to improve circulation or cold hands and cold feet. The other thing is, getting adequate fats in the winter time, eating avocados, using olive oil, soaked nuts and seeds, that seems to be really satisfying. And again, this thing about if you eat all raw food, you'll have a cold, damp spleen and you'll have impaired digestion. That has not been the case in our family at all. We all feel better. We all feel like things are working better.
And your sensitivity to cold is actually decreased. You're
warmer.
Better. You're warmer.
I'm warmer.
Is that maybe because of the better circulation that they talk about?
I think so.
That's great.
Yay.
I have a question about pregnant women. Do pregnant women need to take special concern being on a raw diet, special things they need to take into consideration? Well,
I was somewhat raw during my pregnancy with Rainbow, who's now 25, and I really made myself drink a big vegetable juice every day, with wheatgrass in it. Again, there wasn't as much information out there, 26 years ago. But I think, pregnant women definitely need protein because a fetus is developing its cells very rapidly. Pregnant women need to be careful about getting adequate folic acid. Well, yes, you can get folic acid in a pill, but remember that folic acid, that root word, comes from foliage. So eating your green leafy vegetables can give you that. Pregnant women need adequate calcium. They're helping all this bone development. And people say, how do you get your calcium? Well, I remind them that, grown cows don't drink milk to produce calcium-rich milk. They eat greens. And so by eating adequate greens, kale and collards, which are easy to do raw. Also, tahini is a good source of calcium, almonds, apricots, sea vegetables. And protein, so people say, how do you get your protein? And for pregnant women, yes, don't forget, protein comes from avocados, soaked nuts and seeds, sun-cured olives. And the truth is, a lot of our fruits and vegetables contain protein. It's not like they're devoid of protein, and a lot of those concerns about you need this much protein, know that that number is going to be increased when the food is cooked. And a year ago I would have said pregnant women should eat fish because fish is a good source of protein and high in essential fatty acids. Now there's a lot of publicity coming out that pregnant women should be careful of eating fish because of all the heavy metal and toxic residues in the fish, and they're saying don't eat canned tuna, and be careful of all of these fish. So yes, I think pregnant women should honor that time as like the most special time, and I don't think it's good to make a major lifestyle change when you're first pregnant or in the middle of a pregnancy. But it seems that just because when you first become raw, you may have a cleansing reaction if you've eaten really poorly, but I don't think any harm would come from including more fruits and vegetables in your diet. Mm-hmm. And that certainly makes sense. But I would encourage pregnant women not to make radical changes, but make some gradual increases and study up.
You hear so much about enzymes in the raw food perspective. Can you talk a little about what enzymes are?
Well, from what I understand about enzymes, after reading Enzyme Nutrition by Dr. Howell, they help metabolism, and they're necessary for almost every life function. And there's different types of enzymes. Some enzymes are produced by the body, and it's believed by many health practitioners, I'm not a chemist, but that there's a finite supply of them. It's also possible to get enzymes from raw foods. So the belief is that when you eat raw foods, rather than depleting your body's perhaps finite supply of enzymes, you are constantly giving your body enzymes. And the enzymes help digestion. They contain like a spark of life, their energy. And a scientist or a chemist might look at two foods and say there's no difference, a raw sunflower seed and a roasted sunflower seed. But the truth is, if you plant the raw sunflower seed and the roasted sunflower seed next to each other and you water them both and pray over them or whatever it is you want to do, the raw one has the life force to grow into a 6-foot-tall plant, and the roasted one will rot in the ground. So it might also be possible that some of that invisible force, that chi, that life force, is part of what makes live foods really different. Mm. So someone might say, well, the B vitamins don't change, but the truth is usually cooking does decrease B vitamin activity. Mm. It certainly decreases vitamin C activity.
A little while ago when I was talking about loving the simplicity of the natural hygiene perspective, as the longer I eat raw and the more I read about it, the more I find confusion amongst so many of the particulars in the raw food diet. Mm. So many of the guys that really know their stuff disagree about everything: B12, fermented foods, bee pollen, salt,
carrots,
even carrots.
Yeah.
Juicing. Why is there such disagreement?
Well, probably because this is new in our culture, and it just needs to be worked out, and time will tell. And as Victoria Butenko so eloquently says, trust your intuition. And I think you try something out. I've read recipes where they'll recommend sprouted black beans, and I can tell you it doesn't work. So you can't believe everything you read. And since this is kind of new, but we have as Giuliano calls it, a campaign of people being active in this, and we'll all continue to learn from each other. And I think you need to do what feels right for you, and some of it might be sort of individualistic. Should you use superfoods?